year after I buried my husband, I let 3 strangers into my life. Within 4 months, they had my trust, they had my heart, and they very nearly had my name on the deed to everything I owned. People always ask how a grown woman lets that happen. So let me tell you exactly how, because it did not start with a lie. It started with kindness. That spring I was alone in a way that has its own weight. My husband had been gone almost a year, and every morning I still set out 2 cups of tea out of habit. Then a woman at my grief group started saving me a seat and asked how I really was, and actually waited for the answer. Her name was Margaret. Remember her. She matters more than any of the rest. The group met on Tuesday nights in a church basement that smelled like coffee and old carpet. I almost didn't go back after the first time. Margaret was the reason I did. She was older than me, around 60, with soft gray hair and a warm, steady voice. She told us she had lost her husband too. She said she knew how the quiet in an empty house could get so loud you couldn't sleep. When she hugged me goodbye, she held on a second longer than anyone else. I drove home feeling lighter than I had in months. It never once occurred to me to wonder how she always seemed to know exactly what I needed to hear. Over the next few weeks, Margaret became my friend. She brought soup when I had a cold. She sat with me in the shop on slow afternoons and helped me strip the thorns from the roses. She remembered my husband's name, and she said it out loud, which almost no one did anymore. One evening she asked, very gently, whether I had thought about what to do with the insurance money. I told her I hadn't. She smiled and said not to rush. A good woman like me, she said, would know the right thing when it came along. I felt seen. I felt safe. That was the whole point. It was Margaret who introduced me to Julian. She invited me to a little dinner at a friend's house, and there he was. A handsome man about my age, easy to talk to, quick to laugh. Margaret leaned in and told me he was one of the good ones. Recently divorced, she said, and lonely just like me. She had a way of making it sound like fate. Later I would learn that Margaret had introduced a lot of women to Julian. But that night, I just felt lucky. He asked for my number before I left. And Margaret watched us from across the room, looking so happy for me. Julian was never in a hurry, and that was its own kind of spell. Other men wanted things. Julian only ever seemed to want to know me. He remembered the small things I said. He asked about my mother's garden, as if the answer mattered. He told me his life was complicated right now, and that he needed us to stay quiet for a while. For my sake, he said, not his. So I stopped telling people about him. I stopped seeing the few friends who might have asked questions. I thought I was protecting something precious. I was really just making myself easier to fool. After a month, Julian brought me into his world. He sat me down across from his business partner, a polished woman named Vivian. She poured my tea and told me I had lovely hands. A florist's hands, she said. She asked kind questions about my late husband, and I answered every single one. I thought I was being trusted. I thought these were people who finally saw me. I know now that they had done their homework on me long before I ever sat down at that table. The papers came slowly, so slowly, I never felt the edge. Julian and Vivian had a business, and they wanted me to be part of it. Just a small partnership, they said. A bridge, only until spring. Julian would put his hand over mine and tell me that partners signed together. Look, he'd say, my name is already down. See? I was only days from signing. I would have called it love. I know now that it was a schedule. Every warm dinner, every gift, every quiet night had been built to walk me to that one table, that one pen, that one line. The first crack was small, and there was nothing dramatic about it. I was in Julian's car, digging around for the charger, when I found a hotel receipt folded up in the glove box. 2 nights at a place out by the coast. The same weekend he had told me he was away on business alone. The room was booked for 2 people. I just sat there holding it. I told myself there had to be an explanation. I put it back exactly where I found it and said nothing. But my hands were shaking the whole drive home, and I couldn't have told you why. I found out the truth a week later, and it was worse than an affair. Vivian wasn't Julian's business partner. She was his wife. They had been married for 11 years. I wasn't his girlfriend at all. I was the other woman, and I hadn't even known there was a wife to betray. I stood on their street and felt the ground drop out from under the last 3 months of my life. The woman who called my hands lovely was married to the man I had fallen for. And every bit of it, the dinners, the tea, the kindness, had been aimed at me on purpose. I don't remember driving home. I remember standing in the dark of my shop, so ashamed I could barely breathe. I had been the other woman. Me. I kept thinking about what people would say if they ever found out. So I decided they never would. I would tear up the papers, keep my distance, and tell no one. I would carry it alone and just quietly disappear. That is exactly what they count on. A woman's shame keeps her silent. A silent woman stays alone. And a woman alone is easy to take. I almost gave them that. Then Tuesday came, and I went back to the group just to feel a little less alone. Margaret wasn't watching for me that night. She was across the room, sitting very close to a woman I didn't recognize. The woman was younger than me. With red eyes and a wedding ring, she kept turning around her finger. And Margaret was doing the exact thing she had once done for me. She was listening. She was holding on a second too long. She reached out and touched the woman's hand, and I watched her ask some soft question, and I watched the young woman start to answer. Something cold went straight down my spine. I had sat in that same chair. I had been on the other end of that same gentle voice. I don't know why I followed her out. Maybe some part of me already knew. I sat in my car in the dark of the church parking lot, and I watched Margaret walk to the far end of the lot, where 2 people were waiting for her. It was Julian, and it was Vivian. Margaret handed him a folded slip of paper. She nodded back toward the door, where that young widow was still gathering her coat. And all 3 of them stood there completely at ease with one another. The gentle woman who had held my hand at my lowest, who had said my husband's name out loud when no one else would, was standing shoulder to shoulder with the 2 people who had just gutted my life. She had not found me by accident. She had chosen me. Margaret was the one who did the finding. For a few days, I did nothing at all. The shame was still there, and it kept telling me the safe thing was the quiet thing. Then I finally understood something about that shame. It was not an accident. It was the last part of the machine. They needed me too embarrassed to ever speak, because a woman who stays quiet stays alone, and a woman alone is easy to take. The day I stopped being ashamed was the day I stopped being useful to them. So I got up. Margaret found the grieving women. Julian made them fall in love. Vivian took the money and the signatures. I didn't have a list of the others, and I didn't need one. I knew where Margaret hunted. The grief groups, the funerals, the flower shops, all the quiet places the newly alone go. And a florist like me could stand in any one of them without a single person thinking twice. It took me 3 weeks of watching to be sure. I saw Margaret at 2 more grief meetings. I saw her at a funeral I was delivering the flowers to, sitting in the back like a mourner, watching the widow in the front row. And I saw her follow a young woman out to a grocery store parking lot, rest a warm hand on her arm, and say something that made the young woman write down a number. Her name was Elise. So I sat down across from her in a coffee shop and told her the truth. She didn't believe me, not at first. She got angry. She said Margaret was the only person who had been kind to her since the funeral. I understood that better than she could know. So I didn't argue. I just laid my phone on the table and showed her the photos I had taken Margaret in that dark parking lot, standing with Julian and Vivian. She went very quiet. Then she asked me what we were going to do. The hardest part was never finding them. It was being believed. The first woman I called hung up and threatened to phone the police. The second one cried and told me it was cruel to make up such a thing. I understood. I had wanted to disappear too. So, I stopped trying to convince anyone with words. I showed them the photographs. I showed them the hotel receipts. I let them see the same man's face and hear the same story coming out of each other's mouths. One by one, they went quiet. And then, one by one, they got angry. It turned out that once one of us stopped being ashamed, the rest of us could finally breathe. We didn't go to Julian, and we didn't go to Vivian. They were only ever the mouth and the hands. Margaret was the eyes. Without her, they were blind. So we decided to take back the one room she had turned into a hunting ground. The next Tuesday, Margaret walked into the church basement and found all of us waiting for her. Not just me. 7 women, sitting in a half circle, in the same chairs where she used to pick us out. We didn't shout. One by one, we said our husbands' names out loud. And then we said hers. I watched the warmth drain right out of her face. For the first time, there was nothing gentle left in it. The group is safe now. A real counselor runs it. Margaret and the couple are a problem for the police and the lawyers, and news like that travels a lot faster than any quiet story about me ever could. I still run my shop. These days I set out 1 cup of tea, not 2. And when a kind stranger sits down beside me, I let myself enjoy it. I've just learned to watch, first, to see who holds on a second too long.